hello, hello. Is it you, Sean O'Connor, on a Thursday eve before
Yeah,
Christmas?
it is. How are you?
Hello, welcome to the show.
Good to see you. Thanks for including me. Thanks for inviting me. I was looking forward to this all week.
Oh, I'm so grateful to hear that. Hey, everybody, if you are live on the snack with us, this is Unusual Fare. This is where we go live with some of the most interesting people in the world that I just happen to be friends with somehow. That's pretty much that's pretty much my claim to fame. And oh, thanks, Nadine, for shouting it out. I will ask folks to just shout it out if you're here because the man of the hour today on my couch is Sean O'Connor. He is currently the Chief Development Officer at the National Gallery of Art in DC, which is one of the most exceptional national art museums in the entire world. It really puts DC on the map, and it is absolutely free in case you didn't know. And he is formerly of the Audubon Society, which is, I think most folks know, one of the most recognized. It might be one of the oldest conservation organizations in the country. Sean O'Connor, thank you so much for being here. Happy holidays. I'm so glad to have you. How are you? How's your week?
I'm good. It's good. Well, end of the year for fundraisers is always busy time. People like to make their commitments towards the end of the year, and so we have a lot of good stuff happening. A lot of people supporting the gallery. We have some cool videos coming up to celebrate the end of the year and the season next week, which we're excited about. That we're going to share and hopefully help communicate our mission to potential members around the country. So early returns on that is really exciting. So it's been great.
Yeah, no doubt. You look oddly rested and calm for a fundraiser here in this time of year, working in a difficult space. But I am truly grateful that you put aside the time to join me today. I know we talked a little bit about the marketing for this, and I joked around about how this is everyone's chance to meet a real relationship guy finally. And with that said, I want to contextualize Sean, just so folks know. Thanks so much, Tanya, for being here. I want to contextualize Sean for everyone. We're talking about 30 years of values driven value generation for important organizations that we're all aware of. And this is 30 years of multi-sector experience. I am so glad you let me say 30 years because I thought you might be a little vain about it. But
Well, it's just the reality, right? I mean, when I start counting the years, it's just, wow, it's been a long time.
Sean, introduce yourself. Tell us about you.
So, I've been really blessed with a lot of kind of rich, kind of diverse experience over my career. I started in the field of philanthropy when I was 22, and it was before it was really a profession. And I was up in New York, and I was became a director of development at a small elementary school. And then I spent a lot of years in a consulting firm, CCS Fundraising. There might be some CCS fundraising folks out there or alums of that firm who gave me an opportunity to work all around the world, learning the craft of philanthropy and fundraising and lots of different types of organizations. And but then I wanted to build a team and really kind of represent an organization, kind of hold the flag of a mission or of a kind of a mission of one organization. So I went to ASPCA for a while and helped them raise money for cats and dogs. And then I went back to consulting for a while, and then went to Audubon about 7 or 8 years ago. And it was an opportunity to help grow and develop a new way of raising money for a hemispheric conservation organization, and conducted a campaign for them. And that was a very successful experience. And then when the gallery called, it's an opportunity to serve the nation and to serve a sector of the nonprofit space that I love, which is arts and cultural. And it's great. So I have two kids, and I'm married, and I live up in my other house is up in New York, but I relocated down here to serve the institution. And so it's a great opportunity. So I've been at this role for about 7 months.
Yes.
Yeah, and I inherited a really good team. I have some folks who are really passionate about this work and have some good experience, and we're having fun so far.
Yeah, I can tell. I can tell. It comes through, and I've been to some of the events recently at the gallery, and they really have that, pre-COVID energy back.
Yeah.
Different energy, but it's definitely, the same level, if not more kind of meaningful because people cherish those experiences so much more, and everything at the gallery is always so well thought out and so beautiful, and I know you've had a role to play in that. But I almost laughed because and this is a little bit off the script we talked about, so I hope you're game. Because one of the things we talked about was the hardest story you've had to tell, to generate impact, to generate value. But just now you talked a little bit about being there for the cats and dogs. And I'm like, we used to joke when I was at the Holocaust Museum, where I was very blessed to work for some time and where we have mutual connections, obviously, um, that we joked about how doggies and kitties are easy to fundraise about.
They are. Yeah, I mean, that was a very that was, and that's the one of the great things about my experience is that I've learned a lot of lessons at different places, different kind of
Mhm.
organizations. And there was something about dogs and cats. I mean, I do have 6 cats at home, or which is hard to believe. It's mostly because of my wife and my kids, but I no cats down here in DC. But but yeah, I do love animals, and there is something related to philanthropy and animals that's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I know it's a little bit crazy, but and then and really picking up lessons about how to communicate impact and how do you communicate emotion, and really what's the decision process like for people when they're making decisions about aligning with an organization and making commitments, and really at least in my world, making gifts, financial investments in an organization. Why people give is such a big part of um, the work that I do, and understanding why people give and understanding the motivations of philanthropy. It's a big part of what I'd like to study and like to learn, and I think it's a really beautiful part of the country. And I think we're actually still trying to understand exactly why people, at least in this country, are so generous in comparison to other countries, right?
Yeah, and also just the people's motivations are so deep. I mean, I know you have a lot of deep, like, connections to organizations that you've been a part of, and that you continue to have relationships with in the past. Like, I almost feel that you didn't even leave Audubon because you're still in such good touch with Audubon and its message. I see you promoting the amazing Songbird album, which you can tell me a little
Yeah,
bit more about in a
sure.
couple minutes if you want to, even though it's not part of your current
Yeah,
gig.
it's
But
now Grammy. Now, I don't know if you know that it just received
yeah,
a Grammy.
share what it is. I want everyone to be aware of this. I thought this was such a tremendous project, and I found out about it because of you, obviously.
One of the last things I did before I left Audubon was I was approached by a music supervisor, a well-known music executive named Randall Poster, who works with folks like Wes Anderson and Martin Scorsese and others, and helps those folks with music, both
Yeah.
pick, getting the music cleared, etc. So he got the bird bug over the pandemic, and when he was at home a lot, and he felt so inspired about birds that he reached out to his musician friends, and asked them to write and perform songs inspired by birdsong. So there's about 180 tracks from musicians like Nick Cave and Philip Glass, Yoko Ono, Damon Albarn, Mark Ronson, people like that.
Real musicians, the real
Real-
musicians.
and then celebrities like and actors like Liam Neeson and Adrian Brody to read poems about birds. And so there's about 200 tracks, and they created this beautiful box set, which is available, I think, for $400, and all the money will go to Audubon. There's beautiful artwork. He commissioned original art, bird art. He is now in some ways at the intersection of art and birds in particular, and certainly conservation. And yeah, it just received a Grammy nomination for the best box set, so it's kind of exciting.
That is amazing. I wish that I could get my hands on it for less than
Yeah,
$400, but I love the story because it is
yeah,
it's one of those, um, anecdotes about how you were kind of a cultural node to bring together something really meaningful for a lot of people, but it was also super meaningful to, and I'm using marketing speak now, a very high value person to the organization. So it's we t I know I mentioned this to you before. I'm gonna do my little B2B swizzle on some of these things because some of my audience is B2B, even though I know we're not all restricted to that. But just turning that impact story into something that encourages people to take action because they're getting something so much more in return is one of the things that we're going to get to in the meaty part of our conversation. But before we do that, I want to ask, do you remember how I fought my way into your office?
Well, yeah, I was there for a couple weeks, and I was getting a lot of inbound requests for meetings, and then I also was not necessarily. I didn't, there's some confusion about some staffing, and I remember there might have been a missed appointment on our end, perhaps, and then I was double booked most likely, and but I felt I felt I felt that that you had made the trip all the way up to the sixth floor of the East Building, and I felt that it was necessary at least to sit down with you and talk to you, and I was struck by your energy and passion for the work that you do, and it was a good meeting, and it's and you're well known in the work that you do, and certainly in the area as well. So
Oh, it's such a blessing that it worked out, and I just have to say you were so gracious in that moment, but I just when they push you, you don't know when they're gonna push you out on the stage, but when they do, you better tap dance, and you said I think I remember you said, "How do I know you?" And that was, like, the most valuable, pat on the back I could have given myself. I'm like, "This is the halo effect. We
yeah,
know all the same people." You know people that I worked with at Holocaust Museum, you know people that I worked with at Lincoln Center, you know all of the consultants that used to work for those people who worked for those organizations, and so you're like, I know you from somewhere," and I was like, "That's showbiz, baby."
I mean, most likely we probably have met sometime in the past for sure.
For sure, and we have so many of the same, folks that we work with who are amazing people,
Yeah,
frankly, just from New York to DC, the cultural institutions are amazing. Um, so you curled up here in DC
yeah,
because your country called.
yeah. In a lot of ways, yeah. I mean, it sounds a little maybe a little corny, but it's kind of a big deal when you go into that building, and you
Yes.
Capitol is only a few blocks away, and the more understanding of the history of this and the intersection of art and values and the country and what it and why the gallery was actually started to begin with, in
Mm.
1941, and understanding the role of the National Gallery in the UK and all these other national galleries around the world. Art is it's a very significant part. We're in a really divided country. There's a lot of people who care about art don't really care about politics. Art does not have a political party, and so I think it's kind of an interesting opportunity to be in a space that could have big impact on things that are it's always difficult to name, but I think it's a pretty powerful place in terms of what it can do when things are really working there. It's a pretty powerful place.
You know, I have to say, and this is off script too, which I hope you are okay with, because I was so taken by the contemporary indigenous
Mm,
art
right.
exhibit that we went when we it was, the Halloween party, I think, at the museum, that I went in there, and can you just talk a little bit I just because you brought up how art moves all people and how the institution is there to stand to be open to everyone, can you talk a little bit about that exhibit and the meaning of it in kind of the fabric of the narrative of the museum today? Because I was certainly I was blown away.
Yeah, I can maybe can frame it a little bit. I think it's
Please.
again it's one of the first times we've done an Indigenous American contemporary art exhibition at the museum. It's one of the first. Maybe it's the first time in 30 years that we've done something like this with Native American art in general. It's also one of the first. I think it is the first time that an artist actually co-curated the exhibition. John Quick to See Smith, who
Oh,
it was a retrospective of her work up in the Whitney Museum last year. Curated the whole exhibition with Molly Donovan from the gallery. It's a very deep and rich exhibition. It's one of these that you cannot go through in 30 minutes. I think you have to continue to go back and revisit the labels are really deep and rich, and it's a very interesting exhibition. Jeffrey Gibson has a piece there, and Jeffrey Gibson's an important artist who will be representing the United States at the Venice Biennale this year, which opens in April in Venice. So he came to our opening, which was really terrific. A few months ago, we had Secretary Holland there, who's Native American, and she spoke at the event. We had a Native American drum circle. It was kind of powerful. I met there's a young couple from Huntsville, Alabama, who I saw a few weeks ago, and they lent one of their works of art to the exhibition, and they came up for the opening, and they were just incredibly moved by the whole experience. It was a really powerful night, and this is in some ways the our new director, Kay Wynn Feldman, has been there for about 4 years. After she's our fifth director, our first woman director. She came after Rusty Powell, who was there for 26 years. So she and her vision is just getting started. And it's one of the reasons why I'm here is to help find a way to raise money for her vision.
Can you say more about that? I'm just dying to know. And then I have a couple comments about the exhibit that we just talked about, the contemporary exhibit.
Yeah.
And then I knew this conversation, Sean, was going to become one of our normal conversations where we have 6 loops and we have to keep looping back. Oh no, I think I might have lost you. Everyone, Sean has been having some technical difficulties lately. He may or may not be a little behind logging back in, but do wait for him to come back. I know he'll be rejoining. Everyone just hang in there and give him a second because he will be back. And you're stuck with me in the meantime. You're just stuck with me. I don't know what to say. Oh, you're
I'm
back. You
sorry.
made it.
Sorry.
Excellent.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I'm glad we sorted it out. I want you to talk about the director's
Sure.
vision. Go ahead and chime in
Yeah.
about that.
So,
And
so
then, yeah, you got
yeah,
it.
and so Cayman, I think that the gallery is wants to be for the nation and of the people, or of the people for the nation, right? So what does that mean? What do we is the art? How's the art contextualized in the country, in the way the country is today, right? There's very little art in the gallery by women artists. There's very little art by people of color. There's very little art of people who identify maybe as Latinx, folks who are in the United States but maybe came from Cuba or from Honduras or El Salvador. Their art that's representing their own lived experience, right? Their own kind of unique experience is not necessarily represented in the gallery. So a lot of museums around the country, we're not the only one, are looking to diversify their collection to make sure it's in some ways representative of who we are as a country. And the gallery is a little bit unique. We're not an encyclopedic museum like the Met. We don't have artifacts from Mesopotamia or Egypt or any of that. Our earliest object is maybe from the Middle Ages, maybe late Middle Ages before the Renaissance. And so, what does it mean to diversify the collection? It means that private money that we're raising has to go towards acquisition of art, so that it represents where we're headed. Now, in order to do that, we also have to recruit people who actually understand how to interpret, how to identify those objects, as well as communicate it to visitors.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of an integrated approach, right? So it's hiring curators, identifying, maybe creating new curatorial positions. It's finding educators to help interpret those objects to our audience, actually improving our audience engagement and improving our programming. So all that requires philanthropy. So the gallery is funded by taxpayers, right? A lot of the money, we get an allocation. We're not part of the Smithsonian. We're kind of a unique animal. We're a little bit outside of that structure, but we're funded by the federal government for security and physical plant and things like that. But the private philanthropy piece is what drives acquisition of art, education, and exhibitions. And so all that stuff is really kind of where we're headed. And my job is to put together that vision into something that is saleable for our donors, right? So I have to bring people along and communicate that strategy out in a
Yep.
way people are excited and inspired. We also have to find new people who might have said, you know what, I'm gonna take a pass on the gallery maybe 5 years ago, but now they might be like, wait a second, there's something really interesting happening here. And
Yeah.
I have to figure out a way to, like, how do I capture them?
You are the master, and I do think that for folks who aren't aware of what the museum is doing, and by the way, I totally understand, this is where you and I can just go on for hours with the private funding that serves the public good. So on creating a relationship with a organization that is for the public's benefit, but requires private funds to continue, just like the Holocaust Museum.
Right.
There's an assumption that you have funding from the government, so you have everything you need. But I can just say, and I know you alluded to this, just now, but if you look at the work of the teams of people who are working at the National Gallery today, for example, the people who are developing content for your social media team, these are people who are creating content that transcends the walls of the museum, and it brings the museum to, like, I have experiential moments looking at the types of content that your team and at the museum produces on social media that makes it accessible to people who are nowhere near the museum physically.
Right, right. And that's
Tremendous.
I have to take, yeah, those are colleagues of mine. They're not necessarily on my team, but there's an amazing digital
Yeah,
team led by Nick Sharp, and he has been on board for a few years and has put together an amazing team.
amazing.
But that content's important for us, obviously, too, and we can repurpose that to help us drive philanthropy, and those relationships that we're creating across the, not that the gallery siloed, but all organizations have some of that, right? And so we're trying to figure out a way that we can, access and work together. The content that they're creating is really great, and I have to say, I just saw some stuff that is not, it's just on the finishing touches. I saw it today, and it's going to go out on Christmas, I think Christmas Day. So it's really great stuff. And we're trying to integrate the messaging that I'm doing, that I'm responsible for philanthropy, with how we're promoting the organization for visitors, right? So our clients are really visitors and donors and members. And how do we all work together? Are our messaging aligned or not aligned, or are some, all that stuff we're still trying to figure out. It's
And
kind
people who are engaged in a multitude of different reasons, people who have a multitude of different reasons for connecting to the mission of the museum. It's a very complex group of people, right? Because it's such a tremendous institution, so you almost have an embarrassment of riches with the
yeah,
messaging you could do.
yeah.
But I do think that if we can just I want to get to the fun side of Sean, because there is a very fun side of Sean. You've done a great job telling us the story about the National Gallery and your mission there, and we haven't even touched at Audubon beyond the amazing Grammy-nominated piece that you worked with a team to produce. I do want to just give everyone a little palate cleanser and give them the opportunity to enjoy you. I warned you there would be a fast 5 questions.
All right, sounds good. I'm ready. I think I'm ready.
Just,
And so
think,
I'm allowed to say pass or no?
of course. Of course, you're allowed to say pass. I would never subject you to a
No,
compulsory response. I want people to get to know your cool personality. And then, oh, great. I'm glad we have a question coming in about fundraising. And I don't know if this is, Sean, you can let me know if you want to take direct response questions.
I'm
You
sure
can,
yeah, I can
you
do it.
can
I'm
tap
not a
out.
direct response. I'm not a direct response expert, but I have direct
Yeah.
response. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's take this quick question. I'm glad someone's shouting out a question here, because you do have an expert on your hands. And if you're not shouting out a question, you kind of fail.
Right.
Just kidding. So Andrew wants to know, what is the best day to send your last solicitation to your donors? I presume that means annual solicitation to your donors. And that's a direct response question, so feel free to tap out. Or
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like a fun question that maybe not. I'm not saying it's a trick question. It almost sounds like a. I think that the amount of times you send out, requests for support, is, I don't know if there's a special day. I think that there's certainly, oftentimes at Audubon, sometimes a donor would say, how come I'm getting so many emails from your organization? Or how come we're getting so many direct response letters in the mail? And, the smart aleck response typically was, well, it's because it works, right? So I think at the end of the day, the amount of money you raise is in direct proportion to how often you ask, right? I mean, there's some days that you might avoid asking for money for sure, for other reasons, religious reasons, holiday reasons, things like that.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't, I'm not, I don't know if that, I don't know if I have an answer for that question.
I think the answer is probably what you just said, plus, there's a cadence that works,
Right,
but it's specific to every organization, like, you can't base it there's no cookie cutter way to do this with your people.
right, totally.
Alright, so let's take a quick
Sure.
pivot and hit the fast 5. Um, I warned you this was going to happen, but just for the audience's sake, because we like to have fun on this show also, in addition to having deep intellectual conversations, we like to have a good time and get to know our guests, that Sean was not made aware of the questions in advance, but I feel very confident. I promised him that they would not go outside the normal topical, the topics of my Fast 5 questions. So here we go. I am very excited to ask you this one because you are a encyclopedic knowledge of you have an encyclopedic knowledge of music,
Right.
including pop, punk, indie, folk music post like 1980. You're like the deepest in that. What was your first concert, Sean O'Connor?
But this will date me. But I, I went to Yes with the comedian John Hodgman. If you can, this is like one of these really bizarre stories that he and I were friends when we were younger. And I went to his dad and my dad. We went to go see Yes, the band, the prog band in Worcester, Massachusetts, in the 80s. and
What
then
is it?
and then the Thompson twins were probably as well. And then yeah.
What is the song that Yes is best known for?
Well, during that album, it was probably "Owner of a Lonely Heart," which is a
Owner of a lonely
right,
heart.
right. There's other songs, but that was the song.
Okay, I do know that one.
Yeah.
Excellent. Very good story. We could go
Well,
on and on.
the last concert I went to go see Velocity Girl at the 9:30 Club a couple weeks ago. Yeah, if that was your
Full That's your full-on DC mode. Everybody, Sean is in DC mode. He was at the 9:30 Club last weekend at a punk show.
yeah.
Hey, this is the question that every guest on my show gets. Are you a good driver?
I'm a fair driver. I'd rather drive in the day during at night. I drove a lot in Massachusetts and New York, and there's bad drivers in both those states. I find the driving down here to be actually better. I find it to be a little bit better than it is in other states. People seem a little bit more aware of their surroundings. It's not as
Good.
yeah. That's my impression.
Well, it can only get better from New York,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
which is where you're just taking your life in your own hands. Yeah, no, I like to ask people that question because I think it's very interesting to understand how people evaluate their own driving.
Right,
Because, yeah, we're so comfortable with our own driving
right,
that we
right.
have no idea what other people might think about it.
Yeah,
So, okay, here's a fast fact, or a fast question for you. If you could choose a superpower,
yeah,
would it be a cloak of invisibility,
right.
super hearing, or the ability to take a nap anytime you wanna take a nap?
Well, I'm not a big napper necessarily. I haven't reached that stage of my life. I think the cloak of invisibility has always been something that would be fun. The hearing thing, I think, no, because that maybe implies that I'm no. I think the cloak of invisibility for sure. Yeah, that's my final answer.
That's your final answer? And if you could add an option, like, what was the thing that when you were a kid, you
Well,
were
I
like
like the whole notion of time travel is interesting, right? I think that would be a superpower if that actually exists in the superpower list that you might keep there. That would be good. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
good one. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good one. I would like that one too. I'd like all of them, please.
right. Not dramatic time travel. It could be just like 3 days back, 3 days ahead, right? It doesn't have to be. Yeah,
Would you be changing things on the timeline, or would you just wanting to see?
I think just to see. I would be too worried about all the shows that I've seen about time travel and changing, the timelines and all these unintended consequences, right? But
100%. Too
not
risky.
asking a lot. I'm only asking for just, witnessing 3 days forward, 3 days.
Oh my goodness. I feel terrible that we are having such problems with Sean's connectivity. Guess what? That means you're stuck with me again, and it's just gonna be me for, let's say, if I know Sean, it'll be 30 seconds or so. Let's get him back in here.
Yeah, back again.
Back, back, back again. All right, here you are. Okay, we're still on the fast five. Get back in the groove because the next question I have for you is Michael Keaton or Michael Caine? No contact.
No context. Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton. Well, Michael Keaton. I'm the actor, not the character on Family Ties, right?
No, Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton. Yep, Michael Keaton. Yep,
Batman.
yep, that,
Agree.
yep. Absolutely.
Batman or Alfred, basically,
Right,
is the
right.
question.
I got it. Yeah.
Rye or pumpernickel?
Rye.
Yeah, ugh, I knew it. It's all
Yeah.
right. You can stay. Favorite painting in the gallery currently?
Well, the favorite painting currently, yeah, because I do. That's one of the great things. I get to walk.
You can bounce around. So it can
Yeah.
just be your I knew you weren't gonna be able to choose, so I said
No,
current.
well, so one of my favorite paintings just got hung in the Rembrandt gallery. So when I first arrived, I actually looked for it, and it was not on display. So sometimes you get surprised, and so I went back to the gallery, and it's The Mill by Rembrandt, and it's back in the Rembrandt gallery. It's
Okay.
an amazing painting, actually. It's one of the it's so
Why
it's
do you
the,
love it?
it kind of communicates place in a way that not a lot of other paintings can in terms of light
Yeah.
and the way the mill is on the bluff. It's really worth checking out. It's and it's right there in kind of center stage of the Rembrandt gallery.
Is it a
And
large painting?
it's a Rembrandt size painting. I don't know how big it is, but it's
Not huge.
not gigantic, not like the Rubens Daniel Lyon, painting or the Manet paintings. It's medium sized. But that is and I'm
Classic
looking
Rembrandt.
it's amazing. It's
Oh,
amazing.
I have to go check it out. I can't wait to do that. I knew that I couldn't ask you, like, what's your favorite of all time because you could never choose.
No, but
Um,
I'm very, very lucky though. If I'm having a stressful day, then I can just stumble into one of the galleries and just
I
deep.
envy you. I
Yeah.
do envy you. Yeah, and you told me you have some meditative moments in the morning when you go through just to be
Oh
able
yeah,
to be
right.
with the art. I think that's so great. What a great way to start your day. Here's a fast five question that I haven't asked anyone else. It is your last question, but I think it's really going to give me some things to look into based on your answer, and that is who influences Sean O'Connor?
Uh, in life or work, I mean, I think that I have mentors over my career. I have like three or four
Same way.
that have influenced different parts of my management and leadership style, right? Some of them when I was coming up in the work life in the 20s and the 30s, and some was some kind of influenced how I should interact with or how to interact with donors and with potential clients, because when I was on the other side of the desk, so to speak, some taught me how to create transparency with on my team,
Yeah.
and sense of mutual loyalty and the best definition of what that word can mean, because sometimes it can mean not necessarily good things, but I think in the being a transparent open book person.
Yeah.
uh, and some were really influential how I think about fundraising and the strategy behind it. I think about those mentors a lot. Some of them are passed on. um,
Mm,
um, but I tend to read a lot about business biographies, or to learn about in some ways American business and so I can get really nerdy on I don't know, a JP Morgan biography or a Cherno biography or something like that, because I'm fascinated by the relationship between power and wealth and philanthropy, and I think it's a very interesting part of this business.
yeah.
And the more you understand that, the better I think you can do in this work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think that that was why I wanted to ask you the question. I was thinking like a more from the artful, creative side of you, like
Yeah.
what artists influence you?
On
Yeah,
the creative side, music is a very big part of that, right? So I
yeah,
think it's all different types, and so I listen to a lot of classical music too, and but I'm highly distracted, right? I like a diverse amount of things, and I think the arts and culture for me is really fits my personality in the sense that I find the people to be obviously really creative. I mean, I know that's obvious, but
Yeah.
also interesting, and it's also really complicated. I think
Yeah.
communicating why people care about art is not like when you're talking about like healthcare, we're going to save your life. That's pretty straightforward, right? That's the takeaway.
Yeah.
Talking about animals, say we're going to save that cat, right? That's essentially what you're trying to communicate.
Yep.
I think with art and conservation, those two, right? Like, how do I demonstrate that I'm helping the planet Earth?
Exactly.
How do I demonstrate that I'm actually helping art and culture is really challenging. And I think
Mm.
you're getting at kind of big questions of like, um, you're getting at big questions, right? That I don't think have really been solved in our field, collective field of marketing and philanthropy, of how to, why is art important to people, and why is the gallery important to people, and why do people go to museums? I'm not, there's a lot that's been written about that, but it's not. I don't know. I don't think I've seen a really good explanation of why. And then, getting at the why people give, I
Yes.
understand, but why people give to art is still very interesting to me.
Yeah, say more about that because at least, I kind of am thinking through, and this is one of the things that was supposed to be part of the meaty part of our conversation
Right.
that I do want to double back to is building a case for support.
Yeah.
How do you tell hard stories? Not hard in the sense of they're complicated, although that could be part of it too, but how do you tell stories that incite action or create a sense of urgency, building the case for support when it's not, you know, Sarah McLachlan, singing
Right.
about,
Yeah.
singing same yeah.
No, I think about that a lot. I mean, like when I was at ASPCA and we were trying to raise bigger gifts, like my role was not to do direct response. I worked alongside Steve Froelich, who is kind of the best direct response person in the country, and he was the one who was worrying about the Sarah McLachlan ads, and I was worrying about communicating to donors who could give more money. And I would joke with him. I said, I wish I could just go into somebody's office and take out my laptop and play them the ad and say, give me $100,000. But people don't, that's not why people give at that level. And so there's different levels and different triggers between direct response, where you're really trying to get at an emotive, you're trying to get people out of their chair to do something, which is really hard, right?
That immediacy.
Yeah, the immediacy piece. And the bigger things, I think there's a lot of psychology in getting and creating not artificial urgency, but urgency around place
Yes.
and legacy. And a lot of people fall into this trap that giving is because of tax reasons or recognition. That's only part of it, and I think that, and sometimes not part of it at all. And I think understanding the motivations of why people give, and then creating a strategy or communication strategy to make sure you're hitting on that science part is not done that often. So I think that, even, and that can be done by just obviously talking to people and asking them why they give. And
It's nuance.
yeah, yeah, right.
It's
Yeah,
that nuance. I mean, I think that's where you come in with this ultimate relationship building kind of ability is understanding at a very because we're talking about a bigger amounts of money at a very personal level.
right. I think that the shift for me in terms of my philosophy, it's like I'd like to ask and listen, not pitch and sell. And a lot of fundraisers do the latter. Not a lot. I mean, that seems a little bit maybe not oversimplistic, but I think that the fundraising is all about listening and asking questions, really, asking questions and listening, really, really active listening, right? I think sometimes organizations or people fall into this kind of transactional nature of fundraising. That's part of it. I mean, I think in DC, I've noticed that a little bit too, is that because there's a lot of political fundraising down here is kind of a lifeblood, and so sometimes when you say you're a fundraiser, people are like, oh, you're a political fundraiser, and no, not that's not what I do. But there's a lot of that's a very different strategy
Yes.
than this kind of philanthropic stuff that I do, and that's
Yeah.
like hard, not hard. It's just a big difference.
How
So.
did you decide that you wanted to be in philanthropy?
So I did a year of volunteer work when I got out of college and with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, and so I was getting paid $20 a week to counsel physically and sexually abused kids in a shelter. Right, it was like this program. It was like the Peace Corps. It's like the Peace Corps, but it was like in Auburn, Washington. Right, I did it for a year.
Wow.
I was fascinated by how these nonprofits got finance. Like, how do you guys, how do you do this work? And and so it kind of opened my eyes up a little bit what
Yeah.
was. And so I came back and found a job in philanthropy, but it wasn't really a profession. It was not as like it is now, but back then it was still kind of a new thing,
Yeah,
right? And so,
for sure.
but I honestly was more fascinated by the business side of non of social service or mission driven
Yes.
organizations, and I still like the business side of things. I
Yeah.
think, and I'm comfortable in it. I like, admission's important, but people's really the people who are at the organization is incredibly important. So the advice I give to people is, yeah, mission's important, but make sure the people are good too. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the people part of it is really, like, those are the people who make the stories work.
yeah,
That
yeah,
ma and if you're a storyteller like you are, a master listener, but also a terrific storyteller, then you know that, you have to have people who are quite capable around you to carry out that,
yeah,
the relationship building. But, I did wanna reference, because we didn't talk about this before, and I was so excited about bringing up to you was, and when we were in the lobby of this conversation, like, just getting prepped, was that I had watched the Maestro movie, the Bradley Cooper movie,
yeah, yeah.
um, and everyone should watch it. It's on Netflix right now. It's the biopic about Leonard Bernstein, and he's played by Bradley Cooper, but Bradley Cooper also directed the movie, which I always think is interesting. Um, Very a la, A Star Is Born with Gaga. Sorry, it took me a second to bring that back. Yeah, I want everyone to watch that, by the way. But in talking before, I mentioned to you there's this quote that, is in the script of the movie where Leonard Bernstein says to the woman who would become his future wife, like, that they were kindred spirits because they had such varied experiences, and they had different skills that, could fit into those experiences, and different passions, so that they had to decide what they were going to do and be. And I think of that with you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, well, that's nice. I mean, I think that,
yeah,
yeah, I think I was going to be in advertising. I was going to be in sales when I was much younger. I remember applying to a couple advertising agencies. Of course, there was always the path of like working in Merrill Lynch and in finance, and I fell into this, and not fell into this, but in some ways I fell into it. But I really enjoy the work, and I worked hard at it. I'm certainly uh, very happy where I'm at now after a pretty long career, but I also kind of rode the wave of the professionalization of this business, and I think it's such a it's not done. You know what I mean? This whole work is like still evolving. It's very apprentice based work. It's a professional. It has a mixture of it has a creativity side and it has a business side. I mean, a lot of people talk about fundraising as the combination of art and science, right? And it really is. And I actually like both sides of the business. I like the science side, but I also like the art side, the creative side about actually how to do the work.
indeed.
And
The
that's
craft, like, the craft of it.
the craft of it, right? Which
Yes.
is which is really experience based, right? It's you can go to school now for this work and get masters in fundraising and things like that. I'm not trying to be a luddite about technology, and I certainly have questions for you about all that later. But like,
Yeah.
um, I think there is a craft orientation to this work, which I think is interesting, and yeah, it's
Well,
fun.
in a way, it's, you have to sharpen your weapons every day. Like, I know, and the thing
Yeah,
that we never got into about you is how much content you consume
yeah,
on a regular basis. And I feel like this should be part of your key takeaways when you're talking to our audience and anyone who's interested in kind of professionalizing a fundraising career, or even interested in understanding value marketing, frankly. Um, is you read and listen to and go to everything.
yeah,
You are always I don't and your it's an energy. Part of my thing about this is that you have a super high energy for this stuff, but you're also just always absorbing, and then occasionally I feel like you will ping out to
Right.
friends to say like, "Hey, check this out." You'll get people's responses to it. So you're
Right.
also getting a feedback loop. You're just amazing. I think it takes a lot of energy to do that. Say a little bit more about kind of like what's
But
the first thing you read in the morning?
yeah, I do. I mean, it's sad, but I do. I use Twitter as a way, or X as a way to filter content, because like it'll certainly kind of bring things up. But I read the Times and the Post every day, and the Journal, and I love the Financial Times on the weekend because they have a really good cultural section on the weekend. And
Yes.
I have stack of books that I'm trying to bring and try to read next week when I'm up in New York for a week. And but I think the curiosity. I mean, if people will say this, I'm not the first one. I mean, being really really curious about everything is a certainly something I tell my kids. It's a really big part, I think, of this of you know of being successful in work. I mean, if you're not curious, you're
Yeah.
not going to advance. And I think that um, in this business, like if I'm in a meeting and I don't know something, I don't necessarily reveal that, but I'll go back to my office and I'll educate myself on whatever it is because I don't want to be in a situation that I don't know what something is, right? And in this work right now at the gallery, this I'm sure maybe there's some folks from the gallery on this call.
Hope
Um,
so.
the amount of art that I've picked up on over the past, I mean, I was an art generalist. I mean, I could, I can make my way through, but I'm learning a ton every day, a ton, and that is a blast. And then I'm learning about a new donor base, and I'm learning about ways to communicate. And I think to me that's like the most fun about a job like this is that it's not at all boring. And in fact, I feel like I'm behind. I feel like I gotta read more, and but then that helps. That helps the job because it helps create that momentum and that energy that you're talking about. That's required in this.
Yes.
It's fun.
I mean, I have to say, like, I think one of the first times we ever hung out, you said, "I'm just, they've hired me to learn a lot really fast."
Right.
And that you were jubilant.
Yeah.
You were so happy. It's just right where you sit. And for just a FYI, 6 degrees of Sean O'Connor separation. Um, Sean O'Connor, who is our guest tonight, hired my high school and college
Yeah.
boyfriend,
Yeah.
go Ellicott City, go public
Right.
high schools,
Right.
to work at Audubon.
Right.
So let's just say, we're all in good company here. The history and the 6 degrees of Sean O'Connor goes way back. But hey, Sean, I want you to give us a few parting thoughts and the opportunity to ask me any of the questions you've ever had about who is this crazy lady trying to bust into my office,
Yeah.
tap dancing her way into a meeting because she's so excited to meet me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's very flattering. And no, I think. Well, first of all, thanks for giving me an opportunity just to talk. I love this work. I love this profession. I like talking about it. I'm for anyone who would love to talk more, I'm always my philosophy. If anyone reaches out to me directly and finds me, and I'm easily found, I will say yes. Laura's a good example of that. If somebody has the gumption, has the creativity to do that, I'm absolutely going to give the time. And so that's I just want to share that if Sykes is on the call, Sykes can help make that happen with me. And then no, I think that there is a quote, not to get a little corny, but there was a
Oh,
quote
yes, please.
I saw this morning, and I was like, wow, this is really powerful. So I'm going to pull it up on my other phone. So we had a donor send a note to us today
Yeah,
about his experience at the gallery, and there's a quote by President Kennedy. This is just kind of encapsulates why I love working at the gallery and where I think we can go. And
yeah.
President Kennedy once said this. He said that the life of the arts is far from an interruption, a distraction in the life of a nation. It's as close to the center of a nation's purpose and is a test of the quality of a nation's civilization. Right. I'm not sure if you talked about that in relation to the National Gallery of Art, but certainly about art. And I think there is something there as it relates to where we are today. So,
And our humanity, our shared humanity,
yeah,
yes,
absolutely. So my question,
indeed.
Laura, is, I think that first of all, I appreciate this. I'm not talking about me is not out of my comfort zone, but talking in a situation like this might be a little bit. So I appreciate giving me an opportunity to push myself. But so tell me about what drives you in this space that you're in, and where you think where you think we're headed, in particular on technology, by the way, too, because I think that there's a lot of talk about AI, which is exhausting. But and I again, I don't want to sound like somebody who's raising their fist at the universe. But what is your own sense of the future? You're a good futurist. So where are we headed?
Ugh, I am appreciative that you would call me a futurist. I think my question is why we're not talking more about how some of these AI capabilities can drive greater equity in skilling and education and the opportunities that AI offers to kind of close the gap between what people who have access to is a Western white, education, to level the playing field more so and create opportunities for people who don't have that, which is most of the people in the world, to create more digital equity in our economy. That's what I would like to explore more, the upside.
Yeah.
Um, I that to me is where we should be more focused, but of course, we're always focused on the business aspect of it.
Are you
Um, say again?
optimistic?
Um, I wouldn't be a November Scorpio if I was optimistic about anything ever.
Yeah.
But about this, I am. Yeah, I am.
Great.
Because I believe that people will bring their morals to the table.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope so.
Indeed. Hey, this has been great, Sean. I don't know what to say. I can't even sum up. Like, this is literally should be the first episode of a series of conversations that we have because again, we get these loops and I have 6 things written down
All right.
about things that I want to talk to you about moving forward. But I do want to say, do you have a call to action or a blessing to share with our friends on the call today? I thought that meditation by our former President Kennedy was quite touching. That might even be in the Kennedy Center. That might
It
even
could
show up somewhere. Yeah,
probably. Yeah. It's the first time I've seen it, which I'm embarrassed. But yeah, it's
please.
amazing. Um, no, I mean, my only is lead by values. I think that one of the things I've learned over the past 4 years, and that's a whole thing that we could talk about. But just Audubon went through a reckoning, and I learned as an executive at that organization. I learned a ton about leadership and a lot of other issues besides that. And
Yeah.
leading by values is incredibly important, right? And I think that that's something I've always hoped to have done my whole career, but I think that I've kind of risen that to the top as a badge, right? Rather than as a kind of a core part of who I am, and I think it's important, and I think that that's something that I will share as a parting thought.
Yes, no, thank you so much, Sean, and thank you so much for being here. Everybody, Sean O'Connor, you can find him on LinkedIn. He is completely accessible, very easy to talk to. He is leading development at the National Gallery of Art, which is a treasure of an institution. If you're in the DMV, you can show up at the National Gallery of Art. It costs nothing to go in there, and there are multiple buildings stuffed with artworks that you wouldn't even believe are free for people to be able to see. I hope that Sean will come back and join us again. Couple quick shout outs. Please look out for a poll from me coming up soon. I'm going to be asking folks what time works best for you to tune in to Unusual Fare. I've been experimenting with times and I want to hear from you. And again, hey, it's me, LK. If you like what you saw here, follow me on LinkedIn. I genuinely try to bring thought leaders to you every single week. Sean O'Connor has been one of them. Sean, thank you so much. I hope people reach out to Sean, reach out to me if you need access to Sean. I'll be happy to connect you with him. He is truly a gift to the National Gallery and the DMV. Sean, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. That was really fun. Thanks again.
Awesome job, Sean. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.